Good evening, odd ones. Welcome back to Odd One Out. I am your co-host, Colin Spencer, and my other co-host, aka the editor and the producer, is Ashley Spencer, my wife. And this is part 3 of Trump's address to Congress. Ashley, would you please like to lead us off?
Um, yes, so we don't have too much more. Where we left off was he began talking about how he wants to give police officers support and the respect that they deserve. He talks about, I'm not sure, I can't remember what police officer this was, but he talks about a police officer's funeral he supposedly went to recently. He then says that he wants to have a mandatory death penalty for anyone who kills a police officer. The only thing I really want to say about this is that I can't take someone seriously who says that they respect police officers when they have pardoned all of the January 6th insurrectionists who, so some of them beat and hurt police officers, but they've all been pardoned and let out of prison. So I can't take any of that seriously. I don't know if you have anything that you want to say on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely something that if you don't have any clue what's going on, it sounds nice. But if you actually understand January 6th's implications, and actually, while this is not just a common officer in blue, he was not very cordial with the FBI investigators that came and looked for his documents at Mar-a-Lago. And his staff was very abrasive with the officers and obstructive in their investigation. So it's definitely something where it's a bunch of hollow words, and it's all just for the sake of being political and campaigning. Even though he's already won, it's all about campaigning.
100%. He then goes on to recognize a child who has cancer, and what did they do? They gave him...
So first, he had many times been an honorary police officer. The city would make him an honorary police officer, and this time Trump did it again, but with he made him a secret service. Yes.
Right. Okay. So that happened, which again sounds great, and that is great for that kid.
Definitely.
However, it's just the hypocrisy of everything, of him recognizing this child who has cancer, but at the same time we know that he has just cut funding to, I don't want to say it wrong, so let me pull back up the article that I had. He cut funding to National Institutes of Health. So these are research institutions, universities that are doing medical research for things like cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease. He cut funding. So, is it... I think it's kind of one of those things we don't know exactly where the cuts are going to go, but he cut funding for research that goes towards cancer research, all while recognizing this child who has cancer.
And I'd heard so many shots coming from the right at the left for, why don't you stand up and clap? And that within a vacuum, I do wish the Dems would have stood up and clapped. I do know there's a couple. I saw that there were a couple that did. However, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear from at least the Republican Congress people. I don't want to hear anything. The ones that are saying that, the same ones that know what they're doing, that know that funding got cut off. They are well aware of that. They're not stupid. Mm-hmm. They're working for the people. They're there in Congress talking about these issues every single day. And so, if you personally don't like that the Dems didn't stand up and clap, I respect your opinion. However, I don't want to hear it from hypocrites who they themselves did way more damage than simply not standing up and giving an ovation.
So yeah, I mean, I just wrote that down because we wanted to point that out. He then goes to recognize RFK RFK Jr. talks about how he gave a statistic talking about that more kids these days have autism, and he said that 1 in 36 kids have autism. I can't trust anything he says, so I went and fact checked it. Shockingly, that is, he actually was right on that statistic. However, he said it in a way to make it seem like, you know, we're gonna find out why more kids are have autism. Like, we're gonna find out. I was on a website that it's a foundation for autism. They say that we simply now are able to diagnose it. More kids are getting screened, which would lead to more kids now being diagnosed with autism. It's not that more kids now have autism, they just weren't all getting diagnosed before.
Yeah, I mean, we can all think to our own personal experiences going back in school, and should be well aware that there were autistic kids amongst us who were not diagnosed. You know, I can think of a handful of my classmates that, you know, looking back, it just is like, yeah, that's obvious that that's what's going on. The poor people got picked on into oblivion, and were different from people who were neurodivergent, and all that we were saying were just, you weirdo, you weirdo, you know, and just, it's the ignorance of it. It's the total disregard of Trump just throwing out thousands of cases since the 90s, since the first main study on trying to link autism and vaccines was established. That was a very rigged trial, and I'm not going to go over it because I already spoke on it in a previous video. It's just again, lies to push an agenda. That's all it is. It's lies to push a destructive agenda. So.
And he didn't say in his speech that, you know, that vaccines are causing it, but he was insinuating that there's something causing more kids to have autism.
Yeah, and he didn't, and she's right. He didn't make that specific connection, but in several interviews before, he's used the exact same stats and talked about it being related to vaccines. So, just again, it's a common theme of we're gonna look at it when we're gonna get it figured out. It's like we think we've got a pretty good understanding of it. You know, I don't know why we're suddenly trusting, you know, people like Donald Trump to be the revelators of science. So that's about all I have to say on that.
And then kind of just some last quotes I wrote. He says, "Wokeness is trouble, wokeness is bad." That was a direct quote from him. His ramblings about the Panama Canal. He then recognizes, he talks about the shooting that happened at his rally, and recognizes the family of the man there who died. But then, in front of this man's family, says that God saved him, because God saved Trump and let this other man die, I guess.
God moved that bullet from Trump to that other man.
It's
a narcissist.
That's just so wild to say, and especially in front of the family of someone else who died. Because why? I don't even want to complete what I was going to say, but I just think it was insensitive. But that's pretty much how he ended his speech, saying that God saved him.
You know, I'm trying to be open on this channel. I'm going to get things wrong. You know, like for instance, I made a remark that I want to clarify yesterday, talking about, the quote I made was, which was not actually what I believe, I just worded it wrongly, was that I don't think trans people should be in sports. That's not what I meant. What I meant is, I don't think, say, for instance, a trans female should be in a woman boxing match. I think that there's other things we can look at, whether we put subdivisions with themselves so they can still compete. So, but even that being said, that might offend you at home, and I understand. That's just my honest opinion. Another very honest thing that I have here is, shoot, I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
He said God saved him.
Yes. Okay. So I apologize. This might be offensive. This is obviously a very tragic moment for this family, but what state? How is it not cultish to that's not the first time Trump has said that God saved him and this man died.
Right.
How do you continually take that in as a widow and having two daughters and just be like,
And be present there at his speech for him to say that.
and this dates back to when the incident happened. Trump didn't reach out to her, never tried to give her a phone call. Biden gave her a phone call that day and tried to.
She wouldn't take his phone call.
That's right, and it's because she said that that's like what her husband would want her to do, and that by itself is an understandable thing. I'm not. This is not my quote, so I'm stealing it from somebody else that I saw. I forget the guy's name. I wanted to give him credit. If I ever figure it out, I'll come back around. But I feel I feel really awful for that experience for them, for having to be there and the husband dying. But I also feel awful that they had to be that way at a Trump rally. That you really went there to risk. That you were there at a Trump rally, full of hate speech all around you, taking your wife, taking your daughters, I assume, if not still taking your wife, and that's the hill that you died on, quite literally. It's an awful tragedy, but this is just another, this is not reality we're living in. So, without going off of too much of a tangent, it's just unbelievable what some people are willing to do to bend the knee to one man, including, I'm sorry, she may not be seeing it this way, but just a total disregard for her husband to uplift Trump. It's actually what it is, putting her husband down to uplift Trump, and it seems like she's okay with that. So everybody grieves differently. I'm not going to sit here and harshly attack her. That's just my observations to the situation, and I think it speaks a lot to why the left likes to call it a cult. So, and it's hard to call an almost half majority of voters an almost half majority a cult because it's such a large number. However, it's not about the quantity we're talking about. It's how they function.
No, it wasn't half of.
That's why I said almost. Go ahead.
But a third of voters didn't vote.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
It wasn't.
almost half of those who did vote, and that's not to say all the Dems and people who maybe would have voted sat at home and saying, I don't know, it's in the bag, or I just don't want to vote, whatever. So that's just my observation. It's really interesting how Trump is put up on the highest mountain. It's really interesting. And really quickly, if I can sneak in that same ideology, the left it's not about one man. There's so many people at the top. Nobody gets worshipped. Nobody walked around wearing Biden merch and repeating everything that Biden said as if it was true. Most of us, I think, probably just lived our lives and didn't have to worry about madness happening every single day. But the right is literally, the whole ideology is Donald Trump. Whatever he says goes. It's a flip and it's a flop. He is honestly a deity within the group. So it's something I've experienced. The left is not about one man. It's about several different values, and the right is literally just one man and whatever he says. So
I think I would a couple things I'd like to say about, now that we've completely gone through the speech. I didn't write down everything. I'm sure there's things we didn't point out. I just wrote down the things that stood out to me. I think the big thing I would like to say is that, like we pointed out, he talked about immigrants multiple times. Spent a lot of time talking about transgender people. He spent, and we kind of said this, but he spent no time talking about Medicaid and reassuring people that their Medicaid isn't going away. No time talking about health care in general. No time talking about affordable child care, which a lot of people could use. No time talking about, there's a million issues I could say that he spent no time talking about, but he spent a lot of time villainizing transgender people and undocumented immigrants. those two groups of people are not the reason that your groceries are going to be high. They're not the reason that you can't afford childcare. They're not the reason your housing isn't affordable. Him and that party have had to find a group or groups to villainize, to unite people, to hate, and distract you from everything else going on. So, if you hear anything, I just want you to ask yourself, what issues are really important to you? It doesn't matter if you agree with transgender people, how you feel about immigrants, what is important to you living your everyday life? And I guarantee you, if you sit and think about it, immigrants and transgender people are affecting you in no way, shape, or form. Mostly. So I just think it's very telling that most of his speech was centered around these two groups, with a little added in, oh, I renamed the Gulf of Mexico, I changed our language to English, those little things in there. But really nothing about solving our everyday lives.
Yeah, and that's the thing, the address to Congress, as I had mentioned, I do wish that more Dems had stood up and applauded things like the child. You could say that about other topics as well, and I respect that. However, as beautiful as all that is, none of that has to do with the state of the nation. God bless that child, and I'm so glad that they were able to be a Secret Service agent, and they were only given 5 months to live 6 years ago. So there's so much to celebrate. However, the whole purpose of that speech was supposed to be, it's not a State of the Union, but it can essentially be treated much like one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, none of these things, even no matter how beautiful they are, affect any of your day-to-day life whatsoever. They're not policy items. They're window dressings. So, and feel free to interject at any time. I think that kind of wraps up all the speech that we wanted to talk about. It's been, it's several days since it happened. So I've got just three main news pieces to quote-unquote break. It's old news in terms of the digital age, but it's happened since the speech. So we were told by Trump, and I've been told by many of my MAGA friends, that day one, the economy would be immediately better simply by him being in office. I don't know whether that means that Biden was just causing destruction, or that means that Trump is just a savant, running a good economy, or maybe a mixture of both. However, jobs came out today. Unemployment rose. It's at 4.1%, which is, by the way, in historical sense, very good. Very good. It's not at all 3.4%, excuse me, which is what Biden achieved twice, the lowest unemployment in 50 years. So it rose. It was 4% and went up to 4.1%. Yes, those federal jobs that are being cut are part of the number. However, that doesn't, still, you don't just all of a sudden not count that and say, oh, it doesn't matter.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know what do you expect when you're making all these people lose their jobs?
50% of...
And
50% of federal workers are veterans. We mentioned
yes.
that before, but it's a joke. It's all a joke. So you have unemployment that's rising. It's still, in very honest sense, very good place, okay? As it was throughout all of Biden's presidency. Sorry to tell you about that if you don't like to hear that. However, inflation, which had globally been rampant in 2021 and 2022, as far as advanced economies, the USA... and I maybe need to check this, but it was the lowest peak at 9% of all the developed countries. Germany, I remember checking, was like 12%. You had plenty of these other countries that were far higher. China does not, they actually control their own currency. It's a state-run currency. They buy and they sell their own currency, and it's all manipulated. It's a pegged currency. So that was like the only one I saw that did not at all fall in line with the developed nations. So... and he brought that down to 2.4% or 2.2%, I can't remember. He brought it down within about 13 months. It had already reached the threes, which was, well in line way ahead of progress. So Biden did have, he was bringing inflation down. It had definitely slowed. We have one inflation readout under Trump now, and it's 0.5% month over month. And if that pace keeps up, it's not just as simple as 12 times 0.5, because you have inflation on top of inflation on top of inflation, so it's an exponential curve. We're on pace to have 6.5% inflation with no pandemic to blame it on, no pandemic monetary policy from the Federal Reserve to blame it on. The Federal Reserve themselves is trying to tell us that it is literally Trump's policies and his tariffs that are what worry them about the economy. The Atlanta Federal Reserve, and this is a GDP now as they call it. This is not a projection. This is not an estimate. This is a real-time look and measurable look at current GDP. It was 4% when Biden left for the quarter. 4%. It is now negative 2.8%. That is a massive swing, and America has not had a negative drop in GDP. I would probably guess like back in 2020, and I would not blame Trump for that at all. And just any kind of negative GDP is just not normal, period, for America. It's not normal, period. You get two of those in a row, and that's called a recession, which is not at all what we thought we were supposed to get under Trump. It's very, very interesting. So it's supposed to be better as soon as he had office. He literally had to do nothing. The economy was already on the up and up. The wages had flipped above the inflation rate. The wage growth had. So unless you're going to see some dramatic wage increases, we're going to once again be underwater, watching prices rise for faster than our wages, and it's going to hurt Americans. Okay, now on the next series of news, I said I had three. I'd already forgotten one. But the biggest news, period, and like
Did you want to talk about how he went back on the tariffs?
That's right. Yeah, and thank you so much. I saw a hilarious bit on the Daily Show, and Josh, I forget his last name, and then George Acosta, and it's talking about how Trump's been, tariffs are on, tariffs are off, tariffs are back on, tariffs are back off, just back and forth, and it just further proves. I thought Tariff said, Trump, excuse me, we should call him Tariff. Trump said that tariffs are the most beautiful word in the dictionary, that they're lovely, that they're going to bring great success. If that's not a lie, well then why are we not just putting them in place? And I do, again, I want to be fair and open on this channel, for the first time, because this whole time I really have thought that Trump is so stubborn and has no freaking clue what's going on about tariffs. I actually do think that he does understand that they're damaging, and I think he's trying to use them for leverage. I definitely do. However, it's falling flat in front of his face. Do you want to know what's happening? Canada didn't rescind their tariffs. They kept theirs. They just signed an executive order tonight, by the way, where they, I don't know if I showed you this. This is crazy. They mocked him. You know, we were supposed to be the joke the last 4 years. They mocked him. The guy signing it, I don't know if Trudeau's already out of power. I don't really keep up too much. But he signed it and said, this is beautiful, this is the greatest story. He's literally mocking Trump, and everybody behind him is snickering. And he holds up the order and saying that American booze will no longer be on Canadian shelves. So you got Trump who's like, I'm going to put up these tariffs to try to get deals out of these people. I'm going to extort them, just like he did with Ukraine. But via tariffs, I'm going to extort them. And Canada's like, we're not going to back down, do what you want. I've already told my people. Trudeau literally said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Canadians. This is going to be tough. Okay. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Canadians. This is going to be tough. And lo and behold, they're the ones that didn't back down. American companies are getting hurt. Jack Daniels, all your favorite booze out there, those American companies are getting hurt. So, I don't know if that's supposed to be panic mode or what that's supposed to necessarily mean as far as your favorite beverage. But that's just, it's chaotic economic policy. It's total chaos. It doesn't make any sense. There is no control. The markets can't stand it. The stock market is literally kind of imploding right in front of our eyes. I think it's, down 5% from where it was just about a week and a half ago or so. So, that's the tariff news. The biggest news, militarily, arguably, in terms of what it could mean, what it could imply. For the first time in 40 years, we have two different nations threatening nukes against one another. In the absence of U.S. leadership, and in response to that meeting with Zelensky last Friday, the French President Macron has decided, he addressed France and said, it is up to us now, and if we need to use strategic nukes to defend Europe, we will. We know exactly what they're talking about. There's no other wars going on right now that would affect them. And we've already had Russia since the first day that America sent aid, threatening nukes. So Trump said you're playing with World War III. Well, congratulations, Trump. Just like every accusation is actually a confession, you're playing with World War III. Since Americans honestly decided that they're getting too tired of funding Ukraine and now instead want to fund a several $100 billion Gaza project, because of those switch of priorities and the bending the knee to one man, we are now experiencing a desperate Europe that is feeling like its back is against the wall and is worried that Ukraine is going to collapse and Russia is only going to advance from there and is having flashbacks to World War II. So in response to that, Macron has said, "What's up, man? You really want to go? We got nukes too." So it's not good news. It's the closest that I can personally think of. I mean, I wasn't born when the Cold War ended. Wasn't born when the Soviet Union collapsed. But it's nuclear proliferation on the horizon, and it's thanks to a lack of leadership and foreign policy expertise and lack of diplomacy, lack of alliance, lack of the strongest country on the planet being able to police the world. If you're the strongest country on the planet, you're by far the richest. By far the richest. I'm sorry for everybody who's just like, I want to only care about America and only fund America. It's not realistic. Unless you care about the rest of the world being stable, you need to be able to put your hand out there. Or unless you care about the rest of the world not being stable. So that's where I stand on that. Is there anything else you want to mix in?
I was just looking at something good to end with.
Good.
So, if you're ready for that.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, it is Women's History Month, and tomorrow is actually International Women's Day. So I was just isn't really like any like good news, but I was just gonna share a quote from a inspiring woman in history. So the quote says, "You must never be fearful about what you are doing when it is right." And that was said by Miss Rosa Parks.
It's a good quote.
Let me see if maybe there's one more good one. I mean, they're all good, but I like this one. Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. And
Yep.
that is Maya Angelou. So,
I mean, yeah, literally, you just had Rosa Parks had the last quote. She stood up for women refused to stand up, therefore standing up. Isn't that poetic? That's actually kind of poetic. So that's really good.
yeah, so with all the craziness going on, find time to celebrate the good things. In my opinion, celebrating women is always a good thing. So, happy International Women's Day.
Indeed. And you know what? Celebrate is so freaking hard that it like kind of rubs it in Trump's face, like honestly. When Pride Month comes around, you just wait. This house is going to be... Everybody on the block is going to know what side we stand on and who we defend and who we love and who we want to live with, who we want to do life with.
And stay tuned because, like I said last episode, I am working on an episode about women's issues, which I think we'll be able to do this month. I would like to do this month since it is Women's History Month. So, Tune in.
All right. Well, thank you once again for tuning in. Sorry it took 3 days to do this. There was plenty to cover. So much to cover that I think 3 of our videos put together is longer than his speech. That just goes to show.
I actually don't think it is.
Yeah, she might be right. Um, and also, I mean, it just goes to show how much damage it goes to say. You can say something as stupid and simple as "we're spending $8 million on transgender mice," and that like 5 seconds of a lie can cause so much damage that it takes hours of trying to clarify to fix it. And that's how we got to where we are in the disinformation age. But we're ending on a good note. We're gonna celebrate Women's International Women's Day tomorrow, like it's nobody's business, and we're gonna celebrate every single person on the planet for their days that they have. Sorry about you. I love people. I don't know about you. I don't get triggered about people celebrating other people. I certainly don't worry about what's going on in their pants and wonder what, I don't sit there, the person next to me in the urinal, and I'm like, can you be in here? Sorry, I had to throw that in. Okay. With that, we are out. Call next to
let's
rant.
end it.
Peace out. Odd one out.
Bye.